All right, folks, this is Wager Detective here, November 20th, 2025 at 5:36 in the early evening. We're going to cap this Buffalo Bills versus the Houston Texans game. We're going to start off with the head-to-head history, what I usually like to do. You're getting an inside glimpse at how Wager Detective caps a game. Okay, so the Bills are 2-5 in their last 7 versus the Texans. And I just ran these numbers. The plus minus over that last 7 games between the Texans and Bills is even. Nobody has a plus minus differential as far as points are concerned. The average score in those games is about 40 points a game. The two wins that the Bills did have in those games, one was a 40-0 win, as we see here in October 3rd, 2021, and then the other one was 30-21 back in 2015. But if you look at 2018 to 2024, those were the years where Josh Allen's been with the Bills. So he's got that one win at home, Josh Allen versus the Texans. They crushed them 40-0, and then they lost at the Texans last year 20-23. So a little bit of revenge there, but we'll touch on that a little bit later. And then at the end of this video, I'll tell you what the Bills have done on the road versus non-division teams, and I'll tell you what the Texans have done home versus non-division teams since about 2021, 2022. So as we look here, and so 2-5 the last 7 versus the Texans, and they're 1-4 last 5 at Buffalo. Their point differential in those 5 games is -25. So about minus 5 points per game there over the last 5 at the Texans. And the average score is 38.2 points per game. Okay, we're going to go to the Bills, see what the Bills are up to over here. We take a look. They're 7-3 on the year. They haven't played the toughest schedule. They have the 11th best SRS in the game. Joe Brady's the offensive coordinator. He's been there for 3 years now. He's plus minus. He's 7th. He's got his team 7th in plus minus points, 2nd in offensive yards. They are 17th in giveaways. They do give the ball away a lot. They're 2nd in rushing touchdowns in the NFL with 10. And passing offense, they're 9th in, 8th, as we see here, in passing offensive yards and 8th in touchdowns with they're 8th in passing touchdowns. And they're 2nd in rushing offensive yards. And again, 2nd in offense in yards and 7th in plus minus points. There's your offensive coordinator. Then Bobby Babich is the defensive coordinator, 2nd year there. He's got his team defense sitting at 7 in plus minus points. And then defensively, he's 14th in giving up points. Rushing defense, they're pretty bad. 32nd in the NFL rushing defense. And then passing defense, they're 14th as far as interceptions. And then touchdowns, they're 5th in not giving up passing touchdowns. So certain things are good there. Certain things the Bills are going to have to definitely work on, because that defense is a question mark. We know defense wins championships, so let's see what the Bills have been doing offensively. If we look at yards, again, 2nd in offensive yards, 12th in defense and giving up yards. So not bad there. Passing, they have 18 passing touchdowns on the year. That puts them at 8th. They've only given up 10 passing touchdowns. That puts them at 5th best. So factor that in as you're capping. You know they're going against the Texans, who have a backup quarterback in Davis Mills, who hasn't really shown the propensity to be able to throw the ball effectively, to help his team. But here's where the Texans could have a good chance at beating the Bills, or giving them a tough time. Look at that right there. The Bills are 32nd in giving up rushing touchdowns. They've given up 17 rushing touchdowns on the year. That puts them at 32nd. And yards per attempt, they're 31st in the NFL on defense, giving up 5.4 yards an attempt. So those are the things you're going to be looking at. If the Texans are going to have a chance to stay in this game, they're going to have to exploit the Bills up front on defense and try to run on this Buffalo Bills team. Okay, if we see where they're at. Okay, so this is interesting, right? So the Bills are 8th in the NFL in average time per possession or drive. They're 17th in plays per drive. They're 3rd in yards per drive with 36.5, and they're 2nd in the NFL with points per drive, getting about 2.81. On the defensive side, they're not bad. I mean, you look at them, they're 5th in giving up average time per drive, 6th in average plays per drive, and 9th in average yards per drive. So that's a benefit to them. They can move the ball, they have the ability to run and pass, but they also give up rushing yards. Okay, they give up rushing yards, and they've given up 17 rushing touchdowns on the year, but they got 2 more rushing touchdowns than they've given up, so they're balanced there. They're good on offense, bad on defense. So already I'm starting to think of an over. I'm leaning towards the over, even though the Texans are good. Let's take a look at who the Bills have played this year. They're coming off that game last week where they played Tampa Bay. Okay, they came off that game where they played Tampa Bay, and I want to take a look here. Okay, where they won 44-32. They had 3 turnovers in that game. They have 6 in the last 2 weeks, and the 3 turnovers didn't hurt them against Tampa Bay, but it could hurt them here. I mean, in the sense that, one bad play, if the game's close, this could be an interesting situation where field goal kickers come into play, and maybe that is the difference in this game. But the Texans, like I said, they're not really a scoring team, and we see what Buffalo could do. I mean, if you look here, they've had 3 games this year where they've scored 40 plus, and they got 1, 2, 3. They got 3 games where they've scored 30 plus. So they can move the ball. But again, I want you to keep this in mind. This has been against against an easy cupcake schedule. Look, you played the Jets, you played Miami, you played New Orleans, you beat up on Carolina, which, in retrospect is kind of decent. You lost to Miami, and then you beat a good Tampa Bay team. So, they're susceptible to things. They had 3 rushing touchdowns last week, and that was the first week all year that they didn't let Josh Allen get sacked. So, and Josh Allen had 104 quarterback rating in effect from it. Defensively, what do they like to do? What do teams like to do them? They've only given up 10 passing touchdowns, so you're going to be hard-pressed to get in the end zone on them. They got 3 games this year where they haven't given up a passing touchdown. They gave up only 1 last week to Baker Mayfield. I know they got injuries over there with Bucky Irvin and Mike Evans, but to hold them to only 1 passing touchdown is pretty good. They only got 1 sack last week, but they got 26 sacks on the year, and they've given up 20 sacks on offense, so they're +6 in that category. They can get pressure on the quarterback, but you look at the rushing touchdowns they've given up this year. They gave up 3 last week. I got to think that on a short week, it's kind of hard to fix that problem, but dealing with the fact that you're not dealing with Stroud and you're dealing with Davis Mills, you got to think that the Texans are probably going to be one-dimensional here. We know the Bills have a good pass secondary as far as giving up yards and touchdowns. We're only giving up 10 passing touchdowns. I know the Texans have gotten some guys back, but on a short week, it's kind of hard to prepare, Defensively, the Bills have only forced 13 turnovers. They got 12, so they're -1 in the turnover category. And they're split on defense between getting their turnovers by interception and fumble losses. But they have 1 more interception than fumble loss for their defense. So pretty interesting there. But again, Tampa Bay, the Bills have played a weak schedule. You look at what they've done on the road this year. They're 1-1, 1-2, 2-2 on the road. So this is an interesting game because we know that the Bills are trailing New England in that division, and it could be, this is a crucial game for really both teams. The Texans need to hold on until they get Stroud back, but their offensive line has definitely been a problem for them as we get into it. We'll take a look at the Vegas lines and see what they've done this year. If we look When they're favored against the line for the Bills, they're 3-5. They covered last week. They lost covering against Miami. They lost outright, actually. And then against Carolina, they covered. But look at all these games where they were favored. 4 games in a row, from the Miami game to the Atlanta game, where they were favored, and they didn't cover any of those games, and they lost 2 of those games outright against New England and Atlanta. It's kind of tough to think of a team like that, and then the over-unders are kind of over, under, where against the line, it's been 5 overs and 5 unders. So, interesting there. I want to take a look at the stats here. One thing we didn't touch on. Red zone percentage for the Bills, they are 4th in the NFL, converting 45% of the time, but they do let teams convert 40% of the time. But again, remember the opponent you're going to be playing tonight. You're going against a Texans team that I'm not a DeMeco Ryans fan as a coach. And I know he's dealing with injuries, but he doesn't appeal to me as a coach that maybe they're going to be wanting to go in that direction, to get to a championship, to the next level. If we look at the red zone percentage, I mean, the Bills are top 5. They're getting in the red zone 67% of the time. 24 out of 36 attempts have gotten in, and then they're pretty good at not letting teams in for the red zone. You could say that they don't have a good run game, a good run defense, but we know they got a good pass defense. You're not going to have to worry about having a great pass defense, maybe against Davis Mills, and they do get pressure on the quarterback. The Bills do. So something to keep in mind there. And let's take a look at Josh Allen. He's got 18 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. I would say if he had less interceptions this year, you could put him in that conversation for MVP, but he's got to definitely get better at that. He does have 2 fourth quarter comebacks on the year, and he does have 3 game-winning drives for them. We know James Cook is their main guy on the ground. He's got 7 rushing touchdowns, but look at Josh Allen, 10 rushing touchdowns on the year. That brings him right back, in my opinion, into the MVP conversation. So 19 touchdowns on the ground on the year, and your quarterback has 10 of them. Very, very impressive. Okay, receiving-wise, they got 18 touchdowns on the year. You got Keon Coleman with 3. Dalton Kincaid, let's keep in mind on that. Dalton Kincaid will not be playing tonight. So you're missing a guy that's been targeted 36 times this year, right? For 3rd most on the team. And he's got 448 yards for 2nd best on the team. Yards per reception, he's 2nd best on the team, and he's got 4 touchdowns. He's not going to be playing tonight, so you got to factor that into the game. You take him out of the equation, you still got Keon Coleman, you got Khalil Shakir, you got Jackson Halls, and a couple other guys, but not having Kincaid in there is going to make the Bills probably run the ball a little bit more in their 1st and 2nd down plays. Kicks and punt returns, see if anything stands out here. Nothing really. Kicking. Matt Prater is their field goal kicker, and he's 13 of 15 on the year. He's 1 for 2 from 50 plus, and he's 5 for 5 from 40 to 49. So not bad. 87% field goal kicker. He's 31 of 32 on his extra points, and out of 57 kickoffs, he's only gotten 14% of 8 touchbacks out of 57 kicks. So that's not real impressive, right? You got to have a good special teams to, stop big plays like that, because a guy can break one. Defensively, Joey Bosa leads the NFL in forced fumbles with 4. Something to keep an eye on there. Okay. See what they do. They have 11 forced fumbles on the year, 11 fumble recoveries, 26 sacks, not that great. They do have 56 tackles for loss and 57 quarterback hits. So in 10 games in, they're getting, with 57 quarterback hits, that's about 5.7 a game. And then tackles for loss, they're getting about 5.6 there per game on the year. Okay, so that's the Bills, what they do. Let's take a look at the Houston Texans. DeMeco Ryans. I'm not going to put it all on him because he does have injuries. They got to work on this offensive line. But look, 1st-year offensive coordinator, is always a red flag for me. And then Matt Burke, fifth-year DC, was with me at Miami. Now he's with Houston. He's got his guys just, I mean, look at these numbers. Plus minus points, they're ninth in the NFL. Plus minus yards, they're second. Defensively, yards, they're number one in the NFL. They're number one in points. Rushing defense, they're third in yards. They're ninth in touchdowns. Passing defense, they're third in yards, fifth in touchdowns, third in interceptions. I mean, and if we look at, I mean, listen, we said that the Bills haven't played the toughest schedule. But if you look at these guys, it's like totally the opposite. They have played a tough schedule. You started off with the Rams, you lost by 5. You played Tampa Bay, who the Bills just played, common opponent. You only lost by 1 at home. You played at Jacksonville, lost by 7. You beat up on Tennessee. You went to Baltimore, crushed them. I don't think Lamar played that game, but regardless, you crushed them 44-10. You go to Seattle after that, back-to-back road, and you lose at Seattle. There's no foul in that. Only lost by 8. I want to see, you had a turnover in that game, so that's something that could have contributed to that loss or that game not being closer. You beat San Francisco 26-15. You lost to Denver by only 3. Then you beat Jacksonville, and then you go on the road last week and you win by 3. That's a pretty tough schedule outside of the game they played last week. The problem that you're having here is the quarterback's been sacked 25 times. Okay? In 10 games, that's about 2.5 sacks a game. So 25 sacks for 208 yards is, that's pretty bad. I mean, it's really, so you're getting sacked 2.5 times a game for about 20, almost 21 yards of loss consistently over the whole year. They only have one game where the quarterback hasn't been sacked. Last week, they got sacked 4 times against Tennessee. In Buffalo, as we just shown, they get quarterback pressures, they get sacks, maybe not as much as they'd like, but this could be a game where they feast in that category. They're good at not turning the ball over. They got 3 less turnovers than the Bills. So Texans got 9, the Bills got 12 turnovers, so they're good there. And let's see what they do as far as, they force 16 turnovers on the year. So their defense is going to be the reason why they stay in this game. The question is going to become, can Mills and company score points? And you'd like to think if they can get to 21, if the Texans can get 21 points on the board and I'm getting 5.5, I got to think that they cover the spread and if not, maybe win the game. Maybe it goes to overtime and, you never know what happens there, which is tricky. But you look at them, you look at these guys and see what they're doing. Last 2 weeks, less than 65% of completion ratings. Actually, last 3 weeks, I mean, hovering around 62, 63, 57 completion rating. That's not going to get it done. You don't want to put too much pressure on your defense. We know they're good, but we don't want it to be something where we're relying on them. The Texans, if they want to keep this game close and win, they're going to have to run the ball and convert on third downs. So they're giving up way too many sacks this year. They got 14 passing touchdowns. I give them that. But you look at the rushes, they only got 5 rushing touchdowns the whole year. I mean, it's bad. So how can you take advantage of the Bills, who have the worst rushing defense in the NFL, when you only got 5 rushing touchdowns? It just, I don't see. They've gone 6 games out of their 10 games where they have not scored a rushing touchdown. And the Bills, even though they're last in giving up rushing yards, they're good at not giving up rushing touchdowns, as this video has shown. So I don't necessarily know where the points are going to come from. This could be just a low-scoring dogfight type game. Both teams clawing for a victory. Both teams need a victory. We know the Bills need this win because New England's not letting up. We know the Bills have played a soft schedule compared to the Texans. And the Texans give up a lot of sacks. What else do they do good defensively? We're looking at what the opponents have done against the Bills. They've only given up 10 passing touchdowns, the Texans, all year. That's the strength of the Bills. They got 18 passing touchdowns. Now you're going against a team that's only given up 10 all year. So, and then rushing touchdowns, they've only given up 8. So they don't get in the end zone on the ground, and they've only given up 8 on the year. And so that could limit James Cook. But we also know that Josh Allen can take off and run. He's got 10 rushing. So cat and mouse game there. I know the Bills do not want to get into a situation where they can get their quarterback hurt. This is a game you want to get in and get out, in my opinion. You do not want to be locked in a game like this with a defense as ferocious as this and just have your quarterback running around as big as he is or whatever the case may be to take a big hit. All right, so let's take a look at stats here. Offensively, see if anything stands out here. They're 20th in touchdowns. They only got 14 in the air, but they're 5th in giving up touchdowns on defense. They're 3rd in interceptions, getting passing interceptions from their opponents with 10 of them, right? It is kind of a weakness of Allen if we're looking at what he's done this year. I think he's got 7. We said 7, right? 18 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So that could be cause for concern. If we look at rushing touchdowns, they're 9th in the NFL in giving them up, but they're only 26th in the NFL with rushing touchdowns, with only 5. And if we look at what they do, we looked at all those good things that the Buffalo does per drive, but look at the Bills. They're number 1 in the NFL in letting teams have possession on their drive with 2.56 per possession. They only give up 6.14 plays per drive. That's 2nd in the NFL. And they're number 1 in the NFL in giving up points per drive with 1.92. So, it's going to be tough sledding. I mean, defensively, 3rd down conversions. Offensively, for the Texans, they're 26th. But they're 3rd in the NFL on defense. And then here's the problem for the Texans. They don't give up a lot of yards, this, that, the other. But if you look at where they're at, they're 13 of 30 in the red zone offensively. Here's the stat that stands out. You're doing all this stopping and this, that, the other, but they're 28th in the NFL in allowing in red zone defense, giving up 15 touchdowns out of 23 attempts. So teams aren't necessarily getting in the red zone that much, but when they do, they're scoring at a 65% clip. And I think that could be where the Bills could pull away in this game and cover the spread, man, even though the Texans got this great defense. So that's the narrative in this game. The Texans defense is what people were saying, well, they'll cover. But they don't run the ball well, as we said in this video, right? They don't score rushing touchdowns. They can get the ball in on passing touchdowns, but the Bills aren't bad necessarily there either. They're not good against the run, but they don't give up a lot of rushing touchdowns. They'll let you get to that place where, you can get close to their bend, but don't break team. And I don't know if Davis Mills and these guys are the answer. So, it's a tough one. Kicking and punt returns, nothing stands out there. Let's see who the kicker is here. Fairbarn. He is 22 of 25, 5 for 8 from 50 plus, 88% field goal kicker, 12 for 12 extra points. He has 42 kickoffs, and only 8 of them have landed for a touchback, so not strong there. And then Tommy Townsend, their punter, 42 punts, and he's averaging about 40. He's only averaging 48 yards a punt, 48 and a half yards per punt, and then 35% of his punts are landing inside the 20, so nothing to glean there. Defensively for the Bills, for the Texans, they got 25 sacks on the year. Okay. So that's about 2.5 sacks a game over 10 games. And then they got tackles for loss. They got 51. So about 5 per game there. And they got 53 quarterback hits, so they can get pressure on the quarterback. And interceptions, 10th. So, we're getting to the end of the video here. What's the call? We looked at the stats. We gleaned a lot. This is just a super fucking tough game. Excuse my language. This is a super tough game. I'm coming up on 25 minutes. by far my longest video that I'm going to post here. And let me just think about this. Everything we just capped and reviewed. What is the stronger play here? Is it the total? Let's take a look at where we're at 6 o'clock this evening. Okay, the total is coming in at 44.5. And the line is 5.5, but the book was throwing up 5.5 earlier, and they were giving you plus 100 on that 5.5. Now it's minus 110. So there's a little bit of money coming in on the Texans from earlier. And 44.5 does seem a bit high. This is what I wanted to talk about towards the end of the video to give you a further insight. In the last 23 road games for the Bills against non-division opponents, they're 13-10. Their plus minus over that 23 games between their plus advantage and their minus is coming out to about plus 4.65 on per game over that time, 49 points per game. If we look last 15, they're 8-7 on the road against non-division teams. The plus minus is plus 4.2 points per game over that time. Average score 51.3. We go to the last 7. The Bills are 4-3. Their plus minus is a plus 39, which is about plus 5.57 over that span, and the average score is 56.7. And then their last 5, this is why this total is probably so high. They're 2-3. Their plus minus is 8 for an average of plus 1.6 points per game, but the average score is about 61 points a game in those games. But if you go to the opposite side, the Texans' numbers go completely the opposite way as far as total numbers. The Texans are 8-5 in their last 13 home games, minus 0.23 points per game average, 41.2 total, and then I think this game, between both sides, I think this game does get over. I'm going to call the over here as my stronger play in this game, because I ran the medians for both sides, and that's going to be my stronger play here. Over 44.5, over 44.5. Okay, that's the strong play. And then if I'm going to take a side in this game, I don't even know if I can call 44.5, but I mean I am. But if you look at the last, as we said in the beginning of the video, the Bills are 2-5 in their last 7 at the Texans, and the average score in those games is 19.9 to 19.9. There's no advantage in the plus minus there, so that's to about 40. And then if you get one more touchdown late, anything could happen. I'm going to stick with the over there, over 44.5, and I'm going to take I'm going to call the Texans to cover that spread. I think I'm going to believe that Davis Mills could come out and have a game, and I think the Bills will put up their points, and this could be like a 24-21 game either way, and it just gets over that number, 24-23. I think we're going to see points. So that's going to be my strong play here, over 44.5 in the Bills-Texans game. I know this video is getting long. We're coming up on 30 minutes right now. But that's going to be the call, over 44.5 and the Texans plus 5.5. This is Wager Detective. Sorry for the long video. Wanted to keep it brief, but that's where we're going to go with over 44.5, and we'll take the Texans plus 5.5. I believe that Davis Mills could come in here. He is a third-round draft pick, so out of Stanford, I got to think he's third game in, getting acclimated. You're back home. I think they cover the spread. I'll give it to the Texans here. I got a feeling that, Davis Mills can get the job done. So that's the call here. Texans plus 5.5, over 44.5. This is Wager Detective, Atlantic City, 6:06 p.m. I'll talk to you guys in the winner's circle. Later.